Oh,
Hey, hey.
Hi.
How
Hi.
are you?
Doing well. How are
I'm
you?
gonna just, good. I'm going to just jump right in and get this session started. Emma, Daisy, Ryan, happy to have you here. For everyone else, I'm Amy with Gain Power. I'm excited about the session we're about to have, and frankly, the ones we've already had and still about to have. This whole program has been sort of in development for a while, and in many ways is still evolving. But we're here today, obviously, to talk to you about the work that you do as political consultants. Political service providers is what I've been referring to our collective group as. And there's a few different goals that we have in these sessions. One is to and generally, this is a goal for us at Gain Power. This came about that we started, and we are still very much known for our career center and a place for people who are interested in working in democratic and progressive politics to find career opportunities. And so part of this is just continued conversation about the career opportunities that exist. But the other side to it is that as many people come to us to find staff and talent, they also ask us for recommendations on consultants and service providers. And sometimes they ask us as an organization, sometimes they ask us personally. But obviously, as a consultant myself, I know this is it's a space that in so many ways can be very mysterious to a lot of people. And so our goal for these sessions is just to kind of talk about who you are, what you do, and our audience. We have some people watching live, but we have a lot more who will watch this later. So think of this almost like a podcast that people will come back and watch later. Our audience, our users, are a real mixture of, again, folks who do this work across the country, but we also have a lot of candidates and organizations. Our universe really falls across the campaigns and candidates themselves, consultants and service providers, and then lots of the progressive organizations, not to mention some official government offices. We have a real mixture. Since we launched not quite 4 years ago as Gain Power, we had Democratic Gain before that, but we've got a user community across our different platforms that has grown to be almost 100,000 people, which is a pretty amazing number as I look at it anyway. And so this space, when we first decided to do it, we were going to just do a couple sessions. What we decided to do, partly looking at the apps, is to really make this actually literally a year-long conversation. What we want to do is essentially create almost like a market space for progressive politics that doesn't really exist for the consultants and vendors and other providers. So, and then wanted to create these conversations just again to just showcase who does this work. So yesterday we focused on the organizational side, how organizations hire, what their process is, and what kind of consultants and firms they hire. And today we're talking about the consulting firms themselves. So I've got three of you. I'm going to let you introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about you as individual, your personal stories, and then the companies and services that companies you work for and services you provide. And we've got a bunch of questions, but we'll just go from here. So Emma, I'll start with you just because you're the first on the upper part of the screen. If you don't mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, happy to. Great to be here, and I'm excited to meet Daisy and Ryan as well. So I'm Emma Tupper, she, her pronouns. I have worked in politics and campaigns since 2006. My first campaign was in South Dakota, working to repeal the first abortion ban that they passed in the legislature there. And that really, I think, opened my eyes to a whole new world of what a professional life could look like in public life. I not only felt, incredibly drawn to that movement, but I saw, the power of the Planned Parenthood organizers come in, to do our GOTV, and it inspired me to want to continue that work. I sort of bounced around campaigns for a while after that. I actually went and worked at Planned Parenthood for a year in the Northwest. I'm based in Seattle right now. And then met my current business partner Lisa McLean, who founded Moxie in 1990. I can't remember. We're in our 24th year, so someone needs to do that math. So I started as an associate at Moxie, which is sort of the entry-level position that we'll be hiring for later this year, or I guess later this quarter. Sort of had it as a cycle job and wasn't sure I would, come back, and what I would do is, in my early or mid 20s, and not sure what I wanted to do with my life. And it was just really exciting work to be able to move from like one client, one campaign to another throughout the day, have lots of moving projects and timelines. It was very invigorating for me. We got to do really exciting work. We passed one of the first marriage equality initiatives, flipped legislatures, elected members of Congress. It was just very exciting. And I sort of stuck with it for a while, and became a partner and owner in the 2020 cycle. So it's been, a really great run. I'm proud of the work we've done. Moxie is a direct mail firm. We are nationally distributed at this point. One of the first female-founded direct mail firms, and now are Black and Latina owned as well. Really, excited to share more about what makes me tick when it comes to, direct mail.
Awesome. Ryan, can I go to you and then Daysi?
Great. Yeah. First off, let me apologize because I know I'm like shifting all around. I had an accident and changed my plans for where I would be doing this. But yeah, I got started. I guess I had personal motivations from I guess life experiences, right? A lot of things not going according to plan. Originally, my background was very quantitative. I studied science and mathematics, and so I have a sort of quantitative background, which really makes me very different. Not entirely, because there are data people within politics, but it gives me an edge, definitely, because everyone in this space, I feel like, calls themselves strategists, but a lot don't have hard quantitative skills. And so that was where I was going, right, into like science. I was doing well at that, but not being out. I mean, obviously, I'm a queer person. I feel like that's really obvious, but not being. I really think that having certain burdens on you, being a marginalized person, really limits your potential. And so that really just took a hammer to my life in a lot of ways. And in rebuilding it, or attempting to, I found many obstacles that were policy-based and political. And that sort of forced me almost into this activist space. Although I had been an activist even before I was out, it forced me more so. Really, I've always been the kind of person, even like in third grade, who would like make a petition and petition for something. But it really shifted me to think more in terms of politics and policy, which before I said that I hated. And through that, getting involved with like campaigns, and then eventually just seeing like that there really is no space or no company. And there are so many wonderful, amazing consultants and companies, but there's none that I feel like I've just haven't come across any like mine. So I really had to make one. Again, not so much. It's not that I set out like I'm gonna be the boss, right? It was just like, well, if there is no other, I guess I'll create it. Um, and so yeah, I just sort of have been growing through that vision as an entrepreneur in this political space, uh, doing really everything. I've done everything from field to, of course, communications. And I've just done every job under the sun, basically. So I just have such a variety of experiences that it really uh, gives me a larger perspective, I think.
Do you mind? Sorry, I just want to ask real quick before Daisy goes. Tell us just a little bit more about the services you provide.
Oh, sorry about that. So yeah, our company is full service, really. So everything to do with the campaign, from messaging, um, field, but really like campaign management, staffing, uh, getting every aspect from getting out the vote to fundraising. I write scripts for call time, um, everything. Like, uh, I've done, I made social media stuff, little videos. I don't know if you all have seen them in flyers. For this, I do everything, everything. So yeah.
Great. I'll jump in and introduce myself. My name is Daysi Gonzalez. I'm originally from El Salvador, immigrated to California with my family when I was about 6 years old. So that's informed a lot about my activism. And like Ryan, I never imagined that I would end up in this line of work. When I started school, I declared my major as journalism. I've always had a background in writing. But politics really does affect every aspect of our lives. And for me, it was my immigration status. And after Donald Trump took office in 2016, and my TPS, or my temporary protected status, was taken away, and that upended my life. I didn't know what I was going to do, where I was going to go. I was just on the verge of graduating school. And in the midst of all that, I found this opportunity at Solidarity Strategies. I joined as a summer intern. I came at a time where the party was really energized. We had taken on a lot of exciting new candidates. Later down the line, a lot of the team took a leave of absence to work on the Bernie Sanders campaign. So I, trial by fire, I was one of the few that stayed on at the firm while everyone went to go do that exciting work. And I kept our core clients happy. I really ascended. So in 6 years, I've now grown into my role as a partner at the firm. Solidarity Strategies was founded in 2010 by our president and founder, Chuck Rocha. He saw the need to create more spaces for young people of color like me, like a lot of the over 100 folks that have come through the firm now, to really get their foot in the door. We offer paid internships, which was a big deal for me coming to DC. I might not in any other circumstances be afforded that experience that I've built here. We provide mail services, digital, radio, social media to campaigns and nonprofits. We help with the production, the implementation. we really are a full service firm, so it's a lot easier at times to say what we don't do, which is fundraising and canvas. But yeah, I'm excited for this conversation and to talk a little bit more about our clients, the work that we've done, and our experience.
Awesome. Well, our topic at hand was communications, but that's not because that we have to stay perfectly centered on it. But I don't want to go too far off it, in part because we've got other panels where we'll touch upon it. But I love hearing your personal stories, and I think that that's, in so many ways what makes our party and our movements so rich is the personal stories and the personal experience that all of you bring to the work that you do. I'm curious, and I've got to, I want to keep this kind of informal in our dialogue, but, what you said what brought you to the work, but talking about the work that you do now, let's talk about some of the more specific services that you provide, sort of how you decide to work with clients, whether you find them or they find you. Talk a little bit more tangibly about the actual, way that you market what you do, why someone should hire you, basically, and thoughts around that process too, because that's part of what we're here to talk about is kind of, like I said, demystifying the political consulting work. I think there are a lot of people who have a lot of ideas about it, looking at it from the outside, and even from the inside. For those of us who do it, don't always understand what each other do. So if you don't mind, I'll keep the circle going around, starting back to you. If that's all right.
Yeah, happy to start us off. I think, the question of like how we find clients and what kinds of clients in particular is a really ongoing and like thriving conversation at Moxie, because we want to be really driven to make an impact. So, I think there's a whole series of questions we have around like, and we specifically do direct mail. We don't provide other services. So one of the first questions that we'll want to ask is direct mail actually a good tactic for this campaign? Is it something that we will, be able to do in a robust enough way where it feels like it would make sense to spend the money on it for this campaign? So part of that is that, looking at what's the media market environment, how many targets are there? Will they have enough budget to reach the kinds of people that we think they would in order to win? And then there's sort of a whole set of like values-based considerations. Are they a historic first, or is the ballot measure a historic first? Can we take part in, upsetting a Republican supermajority or flipping a chamber? How impactful will the work be to the, broader political landscape? And so we want to sort of look at it from those two lenses. And that's really an internal conversation that we have before we even approach even, proposing or pursuing a sales lead. I think the other question you asked me is like, how do we get sales leads? And I think it's a range. We get a lot of RFPs, so those can come to our, info ad account, or someone at the firm will get an RFP from an organization, and we'll respond to it. I think the best way that we've found to bring in new clients and retain existing clients is through relationship building. So a lot of that is, in a post-COVID world is not happening as much in person, but it's starting a little bit more. But, really trying to connect with people one-on-one, get to know them, and understand, what their pain points are, what they're really looking for from a vendor, so that we can figure out if we're the right fit and if it makes sense to, pursue an ongoing relationship.
I'll jump in and say.
Oh, Daysi, go ahead. Sorry. No, go ahead, Daysi.
Just to follow Emma's lead, we do a lot of the same things. I just wanted to emphasize the relationship building aspect of this work. Really, if you join a campaign at the city council level or on the local level, you do a good job for them. Their friends are running in other positions throughout the city. There's just so many ways where once you deliver a solid service, you can continue to, get work from those relationships. A lot of the time, folks will approach us because of Chuck Rocha. He's a national figure. They want his help, but that work is done by a lot of our senior staff and our junior staff, and we try our best to deliver solid results, and hopefully that'll lead to more work and recommendations.
I'd say, I mean, those are all great points. I need to note down. I think for me, it's shifted from a sort of like go out trying to get clients or trying to get originally trying to get jobs, right? To more of I guess I've been centering authenticity so much more, and I just feel like before I would be chasing a lot more, trying to get, yeah, I guess get clients. And now I think just being in spaces and saying, this is, how we're different, makes us more, I guess the kind of clients matters a lot to me. I'm definitely, I mean, to be frank, preferential to queer people, to Black people, and issues and organizations, and just marginalized people in general too. So I think just being so different and not trying to fit into the mold has a way of creating like a gravity for us to find each other a lot more. But also do all the basics, of course, social media, emails, all the basic stuff. So it's not like all that stuff is out the window. Going to networking events, all these things, trying to be within communities and be assisting people so that people will remember that, oh, you know how to do a certain thing. So doing all of those things, I guess it just feels a lot more natural now. So it doesn't feel like the same sort of salesy pitch.
I really
I'm
like
curious.
that.
Oh,
And
go ahead.
sorry
Sorry.
to interrupt. I just wanted to add that there are just so many different opportunities. I used to just think when I first started interning that I would be working on federal races, federal campaigns. But there are so many 501c3s, 501c4s that are running independent expenditures, or like I had mentioned before, local races. I didn't even know what a county commissioner did before I started working in this space. And all of those roles are so important. So not necessarily chasing those big fishes or the things that come to mind most often, but looking for opportunities to make an impact on the local level.
I was just going to follow up with a question, and full disclosure for those who may not know, I also am a direct mail consultant. Lisa and Moxie, Emma are incredibly, and I actually am friends with most of my competitors, but we do pretty similar things with some distinct differences. But one of the things that I think is interesting in our space, how some firms really do have just like one focus and others do a lot more things. And, I go back and forth myself, even when I recommend to people. Like, I think sometimes it's nice to have like a really good collective group of people who have their kind of niche specialties, and other times they can feel like they're attacking each other to compete for the same pot, rather than looking holistically. And I have confidence. I know Lisa and Emma, you and I don't know each other as well, but I have confidence you guys don't do that, and I know I don't do that. But a lot do. We see it happen all the time. And then Ryan and Daysi, for you, where you offer multiple services or multiple types of services, how do you prioritize your recommendations? And even Emma, for you, how do you prioritize recommendations for at the beginning, kind of in the start, when you get hired, of like what you do as an individual consultant versus what a campaign should do, which may or may not include mail in our case, right? And I know I found myself on many campaigns where I actually don't think they should do mail, but
exactly, right. I think having more services, I mean, it's definitely like, of course, you two, I'm sure, know mail far better than I do and than I plan to. But having so many different services, or having a broader perspective to say, okay, well, when you're trying to reach this audience tosses all their mail or something, or this audience ignores or doesn't subscribe to any live television, or so it just doesn't make I mean, obviously these still are incredibly impactful ways to reach a wide audience, right? Because like the title says, traditional does still dominate in so many ways, but there are so many nuances that I think I'm able to offer, and full service firms are able to offer, because we have more flexibility in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, I agree with Ryan in that, it's really important, even if you're just focusing in one area, to understand the nuances of each mode of communication, what they do well, what they don't do well, who they speak to well, who they don't speak to well, so that, when you're sitting down to make a plan, you can, I think, have an honest conversation about what the right application of mail is within that ecosystem. So it's, and I agree with you, Amy, there's lots of campaigns where it just wouldn't make sense to do the kind of program you might want to do. Digital and TV can really carry the message in a much more cost-effective way. So I think it, for us, is really being grounded in what mail does well, what TV does well, what digital does well, so that, we can all work together and not have to be like fighting over those pieces of the pie. Ultimately, we all want to win.
Yeah, and a winning campaign or a good team doesn't live in a silo. I appreciate when I work with a mail vendor, if I'm not the mail vendor, that I know what the mail is going to look like, so that the digital can reflect some of those same messaging or visual components, so that voters can recognize this as a multi-layered, program. We want all of these tactics to work well together, and understanding, like has been mentioned, what each does just helps us be better consultants as well. We also offer phone services, so a lot of the times I'm trying to clean up lists that you might use for mail, to make sure that we're reaching the right people, that we're chasing mail, like, did you receive it? Make sure that you remember to vote on this certain day. All of these things should speak.
And I think for other consultants, it's important to think, because I did just talk about doing essentially everything, but also you don't have to do everything. Also, right? It's good to know other people who do things well, so that I can focus on the actual strategy of like how we're going to win, because that's much more of my of what I am doing here, right? Than trying to make the best ads necessarily. How are we going to actually get the effect, and not just, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's great having that holistic sort of view, because then, like Daisy said, I'm much more interested in making sure that whenever someone sees something, they think of our campaign or organization or whatever, having a style guide, and making sure things are consistent through that, and messaging is consistent throughout different mediums. And it's easier to sort of check all of these things when you're not having to do every single one. And I mean, my firm is much smaller too, so that may be an aspect of it, because a lot of things, generally, I'm doing the stuff, so I can only do so much. But even if it was larger, I do think it's worth noting that you don't necessarily have to bring every single thing in-house.
You just touched upon one of the questions, which is, I do think there are a lot of campaigns and organizations that think they should or wonder if they should do stuff in-house versus hire a consultant. And whether you're on the team or you're just pitching to be on the team, how do you help campaigns figure that out? I'm sure, Emma, you come up with this, because I know I do as a mail consultant, where people are like, can you just print it for us? Maybe we'll design it, or vice versa. Can you design it and we'll print it, I
mean, I would say, generally speaking, and going back to kind of how we evaluate marketing or sales opportunities, like one of those pieces is like the client relationship, and do they respect the expertise that their consultant vendor or vendors bring to the table, or do they just want to, do they think it's fine to do it in-house, that they can handle it, or it's not really that hard. You're just sort of, I think often, Amy, you probably get this too, it's like you're just a design shop, you're not really strategists. And that's not fun to do. I think when it comes to like practically how those conversations go down is like, if a client is leaning towards that or talking about it, it feels like an orange flag. Maybe a red flag of, I respect it. And I think it comes from a place of wanting to be effective and impactful and wanting to spend the least amount of money as possible to get, an efficient ROI on what your dollars. But it's not the best use of our time to like do a design only program for you. The expertise that you get from us is not just the design, it is the political strategy as well, the messaging strategy, the design strategy is part of the political strategy, and also the work we've done across the country to develop relationships with print houses, mail vendors, to make sure that your mail gets to people's homes before the election. So I think that's a tough conversation, and it feels like it happens so much more on the mail side than our other consultant friends.
I just want to re-up what Ryan also said about not having to do it all. I think it's important when you bring on a client to be clear with expectations that go both ways. Like, how many pieces of mail are we going to design? How many digital ads are we going to design? Is it worthwhile to bring that in-house for your budget, but also to respect your own time and the quality that you deliver is is worth being paid the price that you set yourself. So.
Yeah, and it's different for different people. I met this woman who essentially did like no fundraising, but she was a scientist, and she got the data from the state, and she was analyzing the data, and she made her own maps to do her doors. I mean, if you want to go the route of sticking things together with chewing gum and paper clips, you have the right to. And sometimes, that is like very grassroots, and people can make that work, and I respect it. But there's also something to be said for people who really are interested in the actual office and not so much all of the campaign work. And if you're really interested in the work of the policies of the office, then take a back seat. Ultimately, I mean, this may not be the most popular thing to say, but I say the campaign manager is the boss of the campaign. You're, as a candidate, like the face of a campaign. You have the policies and stuff, but ultimately your goal is to get in office and to actually legislate or to do whatever that office does. It isn't to become a campaign expert necessarily. If that answers. So I try to articulate that I mean, what is your goal here really? Are you trying to take my job? I mean, because then, if you want to do it, you can do it. But I don't know. I don't think you can do it as well. I think you should stick to what you're trying to do.
Totally fair, especially I think in this environment, where so many people are creators and content creators, and there is a lot of alignment often, in some of the work that's done, and that can and should be done in-house, actually, right? Not everything needs to be vended out or dealt with consultants, right? So finding that medium and how you, at least for us, I have found that's something that we're navigating. It's a little bit different in every client. How do we support the team or the staff in doing their internal work? Because, mail gets done pretty late in most cases, and we've got time to be supportive and want to be supportive and can be supportive, right? But at the same time, that's really not our role, and that's not our position, and nor do we, some of them do think, well, we can design social, we might as well design the mail. And I'm like, it's not quite the same thing. But I'm curious how you've navigated that, Emma, Daisy. You just touched upon it, Ryan. So,
I think it's a balance of wanting to. Amy, you're totally right. Like, how do we show expertise early and often? Which is an ongoing conversation internally at Moxie because our work happens so late in the cycle. I see our early work as really helping support the, sort of smaller P politics that happens, getting endorsements and donors and, people and, sort of insiders excited about a race. We'll do sort of like one-off design projects, like a prospectus that will, make someone look like a real credible candidate, tell their story, and make the case for, why investing in them makes sense. We don't want them to spend too much on design for things like social media graphics and fundraising invites and all of that kind of stuff. So one of the things we'll do early on is, let's do, a small piece, a lit piece, for example, that you can hand out. You can print it in-house. Just, test it out on the doors or at events, and then we can go back to the drawing board and design it, once we get polling back or the race develops further. And I think that helps set up a relationship where you're helping provide some guidance and showing your design and messaging expertise early, but not, saying, oh, we need to print 10,000 of these, and spend the bulk of your, field lit budget early. And so that can, I think, help navigate some of those trickier conversations about, well, what should we do in a house and what shouldn't we?
I agree with everything Emma said, and I'll reiterate that we do general market targeting and services, but often we're sought out for our expertise around Latino voters. Our full team is bilingual. A lot of us are immigrants, children of immigrants, and one of the value adds that our team brings to clients is joining these, the standing weekly meetings, making sure that we're vocal in helping form messages that will go over mail, over digital, over radio. Just integrating yourself into the campaign early, like Emma mentioned, even if it's not delivering a service right away, can help you retain clients. And yeah, that's basically just a good rule of thumb when you join a new team.
Looks like we lost our
fearless leader.
Sorry, I hit something and I went away and I was like, ah! I don't know about you guys. I'm using this in a regular browser and I dare to look at another and I'm like, whoa. Sorry about that. It was only a second. Apologies.
No worries. I think Daysi was just finishing.
There was, and forgive me now, I have to go back to it because I had it open. There was a question in the chat that I thought that was, I don't know, where is it here? Oh, because I thought it was a good one, actually. What are some of the most non-traditional channels, modes, or messaging that have been involved in, and have you or have heard about being used in the industry? I wanted to hear your answers to that one.
I'll jump in. So when we talk about radio, most people think just like traditional, what you hear as you're driving to the car, and that's important to include that in a radio plan. But we've found a lot of success in also integrating digital radio into our programs. So folks that are on Pandora, that are on a lot of the other services that do deliver ads, it's important to look at where voters consume all this information. It's the same with YouTube. A lot of folks are watching TV on their traditional TV, but they aren't consuming broadcast cable or anything like that. They're streaming YouTube, and it's important to consider all of these different vehicles when you're putting together a plan.
I think there's some interesting stuff around like influencers, social media influencers. That's kind of fascinating. We did actually some mailing featuring people who follow certain social media influencers to get them to vote as like a social pressure piece. And I think we may see a lot more of that this cycle. So I don't know, that feels sort of innovative and interesting.
Well, I tend to do a lot more, I guess I've worked a lot more on like sort of more grassroots stuff. So focus more on earned media. And so like the influencer thing is definitely something along the lines like Rolodexing, not just for money, but for influencers in different spaces, like who has connections in different spaces, and has followers in different spaces. And I don't know who hosts a podcast, who can you reach out to elevate your message and your campaign, or drop in, call in to something. And I mean, a lot of those ways can be free. And a lot of people will like to have someone sort of raise their platform in a way too. So
I'll just add my own too. I mean, one, not what I would call non-traditional, but still not necessarily typical. We did some digital billboards last cycle that were really fun. And some of them were done strategically just to sort of psych some people out from their placement. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the things I like doing. And then with mail in particular, you know, you can really do very niche, small quantities to really small groups. And on a couple campaigns, one in particular that comes to mind, you know, really getting much more granular in some of our language communication, not just, you know, English, Spanish, but different African languages, different Asian languages, and, you know, being intentional about communicating not just in the language, but also with the communicator, the messenger, whether it's someone who's an influencer or just a, you know, so just being very intentional about who the messengers are, whether that's on mail, whether that's on TV, whether that's in person, and trying to find more niche places. Church flyers, big one, you know, and I'm not sure I'd call any of this necessarily non-traditional, but it's also not mass communication. And when you're doing small races, or when you're doing big races but are super close, and you're like, every vote counts, and every, you know, you're just looking for a few. I think that's important. Grace, good question. I hope other you guys are saving these questions too, but I'll repeat it. Grace Wire writes, I'm wondering how the modern science on behavior, decision-making, and value-centered communication strategies can be merged with the current landscape of needs, i.e. traditional within the progressive sphere. Anyone want to tackle that?
Oh, well, I am, and this is why I say I really am a strategist, because I really incorporate like psychology, game theory, all these different things within strategy for assessing how people will react and what their actions will be. So I'm very much on board with using science and using linguistics for cues to the advantage of the campaign in an authentic way, of course, and centering, you know, progressive values. But when you know someone is interested in something, or you know you have general data about your demographic, and you have science to say that this is how they'll respond, yeah, I'm definitely down for using that.
I think it's a great question. And I mean, I think that there is a fair amount of this that you see, particularly like, you know, in sort of larger, you know, more national focused progressive organizations. I think there's a lot of interest in like being innovative and you know, as effective as they can be. I think it really comes down to building your team in a way with people who are already bought into this stuff, and or also ongoing education with people not just working as consultants but coming up in the industry, so that you know, folks are thinking about this stuff as they're building their, you know, career trajectory. we do a lot of experimentation with direct mail and have worked with a lot of, narrative projects. And I think that work is so fascinating, and it is, I think, the place we need to be to understand how to do our work more effectively. I keep saying that word, but persuasion is hard, and we need to use all the tools that we can to really move the needle, because just, I'll be the first to say, sending 20 flights of mail to one universe with, not incorporating what will actually persuade them, I think is a missed opportunity and a waste of resources.
I agree with everything said. We see this on social media as well, that people are always upset that the Democratic Party isn't stronger in rebutting some of these Republican crazy talking points. Folks really want to hear authentic messages. They want to hear how you're going to make their lives better. They want to hear how they can relate to candidates. And so going beyond just a standard cookie cutter, you need to vote on this day, vote blue no matter who. Those things are true, but we also need to excite the party. There are so many boogeymen that we can attack, and that's important. But a lot of folks, especially Latino and Latino voters, they don't hear from candidates being defined by themselves. They only hear the negative of the opposing Republican or whoever we're trying to beat, right? So we need to have aspirational messaging. We need to have hope, a reason for people to come out to vote. And I think that goes along with that value-centered communication strategy that really needs to have a better focus in our tactics.
Yeah, I mean, the work that we do has to be, I mean, you said this, persuasion work is really hard. It's hard for anything. And we're all salespeople is something that a lot of people don't want to buy, which is politics, right? I mean, those people do not want to, I mean, in a good way, I hope some people are kind of waking up and realizing it matters. But, and Daysi, you just touched upon this too, which I think this is something I've been thinking a lot about. Actually, I'm going to say something. I'd love your reaction to it. I really believe that we, Democrats, Republicans too, but I'm only going to speak for myself and folks around that I've worked with, have really done a disservice to our candidates, to our party, to our causes, and to our issues over a very long, sustained period of time by demonizing the opposition. And not because we don't want to tell the truth about what the other side's doing and their positions and all that, but we've demonized ourselves in the process, right? We really demonized politics. We've really made it toxic and awful, and unappealing for so many people because of our negative communications. And so I've been talking about this a lot in my own pitches and with my clients and with others in platforms like this. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. It's not like I'm not going to do negative communications anymore. There's going to be times where that's really essential, and we have to, we certainly have to share what the other side is doing or who they are. God knows with Trump as our, nominee on the Republican side. But at the same time, again, I think we do ourselves a disservice, and so we have to do better at doing more positive communications and not just negative. Anyway, love your thoughts on that too.
Can I just jump in too, because I think what you bring up also, I talk about this a lot. Like, Trump is so successful because he's authentic. Like, he's so authentic. Like, people, no matter how vile he is, the authenticity resonates with people. Even though he lies all the time, right? There's something about people being authentic that people gravitate towards. And I think we, as progressives, we have so much infighting, and there is, validity in a lot of it. But it winds up making people not so authentic, and people sometimes, virtue signaling things that they're not really as about. And I think that is what makes people lose trust also in some of us. And that trust is so critical to persuasion.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of this. And I think it is a important challenge that we're facing. I think since 2016, not only is Trump authentic, but I think it's also this shift in politics where it's more about sort of the cult of personality. And I think, Amy, to your point, we also, I don't think, have a lot of faith in voters in our field, and think, oh well, it needs to be really dumbed down. We need to spoon feed them, this messaging, that we can't have, a robust conversation on issues that really matter to people. And I think it starts with sort of how we approach negative. I agree, the way that we, have made it a toxic space has made it hard to get people excited and motivated to want to vote. But I think also just not really focusing on our I think there's a tendency to make the candidate the hero of the story. And it's the voters, right? They're the heroes. And our communication should be really geared at making them helping to tell their story, and identifying, what the hurdles are in front of them, and how X ballot initiative candidate, whoever party is going to be the, help them solve their problems.
I'm mindful that we're coming up to the end of our hour, just sort of flagging that. And I do want to wrap soon, but I want to give you all sort of a chance to make some closing comments. You can respond to my question or add others if you'd like. Daisy, to you. Is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's fine. What everyone said, I agree with, so I'll just leave that there. I'll close with just saying, and this has been so meaningful in my career, is that I would have never landed here on my own. Someone gave me an opportunity, and it's now my responsibility to help other people, to not pull that ladder up behind me, right? So if anyone is unsure of what their next step is, if you feel like you're not finding your footing in this space, there are so many people willing to help, and I'll include myself in that as well. So happy to connect with anyone over LinkedIn, social media, what have you. I'm really big on making sure that this consulting space looks more like the people that we're communicating with. Having my input, even in just translating something to Spanish, is such a value. I'm from El Salvador. Sometimes I communicate with Salvadorans. Sometimes I communicate with folks from different diasporas. But I have a lot of shared experiences that I know make my work better. And so we need more folks that look like us here.
100%. Brian, right?
I think my closing remarks, even though I didn't really bring this up, but I did talk about like incorporating psychology and different things into your messaging, and just being aware of groupthink. I would say being aware of when you may have biases, because it's important to be aware of that so that you can see outside of that. Sometimes I think us as progressives, we associate with each other so much that we don't necessarily, pay attention to what's being said outside of the sort of bubble, right? Especially me, I'm a queer multiracial person, right? But being aware of politics, even if it feels toxic, if things seem toxic, being aware of what regular people are thinking in the community and what your opponents are thinking, and not just, like you said, Amy, villainizing them.
Emma, parting comments?
Well, I just want to thank you, Amy, and Brian and Daisy. This has been really great. I always, I think, find it so helpful to have space to talk about what we do, and especially with other practitioners. And I hope it's helpful for folks, looking at this as a potential career path. And would just echo Daisy. I mean, I think it can be really hard to know where to start if this is something you're interested in, and definitely here if you're interested in chatting and want to hear more about what this industry looks like, and would be happy to sit down and chat with anybody.
I will wrap it up and just say thank you to all of you for being willing to be part of this conversation and for being active participants in our community, in our professional community, and Gain Power specifically, but more broadly than that. I'm grateful to have you as partners and colleagues in the work that we all do, and appreciate you taking a break from what you regularly do to be here with us today. So thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right, we'll wrap.
Thank you. This is great.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.